Pro photographers have always been afraid to admit their crucial beginner mistakes that held them back until now, because in this video, I'm gonna be revealing the 5 beginner mistakes that held me back so that you don't make the same mistakes and waste time like I did. Hey, what's up guys? My name's David Johnston. This is the Landscape Photography University channel. If you're into taking photos that would actually excite you, then subscribe to this channel and ring the notification bell because that's what we show you on this channel. Let's jump right into this list. Number 1 mistake that I made was thinking that I had to use manual mode every single time that I took a photo. Now, if you don't know what manual mode is, it gives you full control of your camera. You select the ISO, the aperture, the shutter speed, even down to manual focus, anything like that. So I thought I had to do this every single time or people just wouldn't take me seriously. So I spent a long time learning manual mode, which I think all photographers should have a good grasp on, but not every single beginner photographer should think that you have to use manual mode. In fact, I was talking with a photographer friend of mine about this same topic of using manual mode versus others. This photographer studied under Ansel Adams for years and said, you know what, I typically just use aperture priority. Aperture priority is something that you choose the aperture of the photo, something like f8 to f14 is typically what landscape photographers are using, and then your camera selects the ISO, the shutter speed, so that you can simplify the process and focus on what's actually making the photo a good photo, i.e. composition. More on that in just a second. But hearing a pro photographer say that they only use aperture priority most of the time really took a burden off of my shoulders and allowed me to simplify the process of using manual mode every single time, which can really wear on you as a beginner photographer and complicate the process. We don't want to throw too much at beginners. We want them to feel confident behind the camera. So don't always focus on that you have to use manual mode or you have to use this and that. Use the thing that is easiest for you as a beginner and helps you to learn your camera as fast as possible. Mistake number 2 was buying too much camera gear. Now, as a beginner, you may think, hey, I need to get this kind of photo, and I need gear to help me do that. Or my camera is just not good enough, or I need this lens that just came out. I want you to pump the brakes on that kind of thinking because too much gear, like we talked about using manual mode just a second ago, can complicate the process. Think with me for a second. You're out in the field, you're taking photos, but you're worried that you're not getting the right focal distance with the 7 lenses that you're trying to choose between. Now, would that process be easier if you were only choosing 1 lens and you spent that time working on the composition? Again, I'll get to that in the next tip. Thinking about the composition and what actually makes the photo look good, and you don't miss a moment of that happening. You're probably much less stressed thinking about that second scenario, and your photo will actually turn out much better. You know what? Photographers, as I talk to them as professionals, they've said that they bought a lot of gear when they were first starting out, but as they turned pro and kept taking photos, they actually sold off a lot of that gear because they found they only used a few lenses, maybe 2 to 3, and then just 1 camera body. So don't overcomplicate your bag or weigh down your bag with the amount of gear that you're actually taking with you. Number 3 is not advancing beyond the beginner composition tips. You know what I'm saying. Everybody talks about leading lines, foregrounds, rule of thirds. Go beyond those things, because what happens when you get stuck in those simplistic composition strategies is you never break out and go beyond the beginner phase of photography. You get good fast, but then you plateau and you get a little bit bored with photography because everything is the same every single time. What happens when you break beyond those beginner steps of composition is that you stop seeing landscapes as objects, mountains, trees, rivers, waterfalls, and you start seeing them as shapes, circles, squares, rectangles, triangles, and your photos get better. They see items in the photo in the right pattern. If you're wondering about that step of composition, I want to invite you to learn Landscape Photography University and become a member of LPU because we teach composition and how to take photos that actually excite you. I'm going to offer you a free 7-day membership if you use the link down below in the video description and in the pinned comments, so you can check it out, you can see what it's all about. about, and you can start learning right away. Tip number 4 is not linking the in-field work with the post-processing work and focusing on the entire process of photography. Now, what do I mean when I'm talking about the entire process of photography? Well, the post-processing work has a lot to do with the in-field work. They're not two separate things. When you think about them as two separate things, there's a disconnect between why you took the photo and how you're editing the photo. If there's that disconnect, the photo kind of falls flat because you're not amplifying why you took the photo in the field. When you're able to link those two things together, your photo becomes much more cohesive and it turns out a lot better too. This took me a long time to realize, but when I realized that, hey, I'm not just taking a photo and then months or weeks later editing the photo in however way I want to, I remembered back to why I was actually taking the photo and editing to that same idea, and the photos got much, much better, and I enjoyed my photography a lot more too. Tip number 5 is one you've probably heard referred to in life, and that was spoken by Teddy Roosevelt when he said, "Comparison is the thief of joy." Now, if you think about comparison and comparing and where we are right now in society with social media and looking at others all the time, it can be really daunting to become a photographer and break out of that beginner's phase. But what I want you to do is put blinders on and think about your own process instead of what this professional photographer is doing, how good their photos look, because they've been at it for a long time. You're a beginner, you're starting out. Give yourself a pat on the back. Be kind to yourself about the successes that you have and the performance that you have every single time you take a photo. Applaud yourself and be kind to yourself about what you're doing right, and then think about what you need to improve on the next time you go out and take a photo. This is your process, not somebody else's. So focus on your process. Don't get distracted by what others are doing, and focus on your successes and what you need to do to get better as well. If you want more photography tips, here's a video that's going to help you out a ton.